Song for the end. How about a song for the end? There we go, then. Come on, let's get some of the lads together. Let's have a good old sing song, yeah. Okay, yeah, all right. Come on, fellas. Get around the piano. Let's have a good go. Come on, then. Are you ready? Come on, you lot. Go on, then.
Oh, 'tis our delight for the red and white. The Imps are here to stay. Oh, 'tis our delight for the red and white. The Imps are here to stay. Lincoln City are the team. The Radiance is their name. Stinsel Bank is their home ground and football is their game. So come and cheer them on, you mad, support them all the way. Oh, 'tis our delight for the red and white. The Imps are here to stay. Oh, 'tis our...
There's no way Sheffield Wednesday are winning that game, right? Somebody's already clipped it up, posted it to me in WhatsApp. Fair enough. Do you know what? The scenes last night at Hillsborough, I've kind of caught up with them a little bit on my phone. I'm a football fan, so you know I'm a Lincoln fan, but I also like football. I like League One. I want to see it. I've got friends who are Sheffield Wednesday fans. I've got Terry, obviously Terry Hibbard, who used to work at the club, Sheff Wednesday fan, good friend of mine. My mate Chris, not the Chris from the podcast, another Chris, Sheff Wednesday fan. I know lots of them. They're pretty big in Lincoln. The guy that runs Coney's, the manager, I think he is at Coney's, Sheffield Wednesday fan, Ben. So it was nice. It was nice to see football fans happy that I don't have a deep resentment for. So when Peterborough won 4-0, I found it hard to share in their delight because it's Peterborough. Fuck them. But when it's Sheffield Wednesday, I didn't feel as bad. I won't go fawning all over another club on social media in the immediate aftermath of a game, but I enjoyed seeing fans happy, fans on the pitch, fans achieving something. I felt the same when Cambridge stayed up on the final game of the season. It's emotion. I have a bit of a warning, Sheff Wednesday fans. That's a high that you will find yourself continually chasing, and it's something that kind of struck me as I was watching those scenes. And also yesterday, I was having a bit of a tough afternoon, and I looked back. I think it was yesterday, might have been the day before. I looked back at Nathan Arnold's goal against Ipswich, and it made me realise how much football is like a drug, how much it's like an addiction, why it's an addiction. Because you experience those moments like the Sheffield Wednesday fans did coming onto the pitch last night, like we did against Ipswich. And you want that again and again. And we were lucky because against Ipswich, we got it again and again. You know, we beat Ipswich, we beat Brighton, we beat Burnley, we got that. We won the league, we went to Wembley, we won League Two. There was always something. There was always, the next hit wasn't too bad. Was it ever as high as Ipswich? I don't know. The first high is always the biggest. And, you know, it's easy to say the first high because you could go back then. What about 1976? What about 1987? Same with Sheffield Wednesday fans. And they'll talk about winning Littlewoods Cups or whatever it was back in the day. But for a generation of fans, that'll be their first real high in years and years. And it gives them such a hunger now, doesn't it, to go on in the final and kind of do something there. And if they don't, lots of what they do next season will be judged on last night's game. They'll be judged on that high. And actually, it can be a millstone around a manager's neck, I think. And it takes me back to 2 years ago. 2 years ago today, Sunderland in the playoff semi-final. Michael Appleton, in my opinion, suffered worse in the second season than not dissecting his reign because of the achievements in the first. Keeping Lincoln City in League One, in my opinion, is an achievement. It's not a huge achievement. It's not a we're on the pitch achievement. It's not the achievement that Cambridge managed on the final day of the season, but it's an achievement. But it wasn't for Michael Appleton in the eyes of the supporters in his final season at the club. And why is that? It's because we were chasing that feeling. We were chasing something that drug addicts chase. The feeling of that first hit. Good hit. You've never been a drug addict. It's hard to put it, I think, into words, and people who have been addicted to drugs in the past. And I was kind of on tramadol, remember, for a very long while. I remember the first couple of trammies I had, and it's like, these are the way forward. And then the next two you take don't quite reach the pain, they don't quite manage it. So you either go for more, but with football you can't go for more, can you? You can't go, right, I'm going to take in 20 matches looking for that high. It either delivers or it doesn't. When it doesn't, the changes in the level of disappointment. If you draw 1-1 at Hillsborough after you've lost 2 games, it feels like an achievement. If you win 2 games and draw 1-1 at Hillsborough, it feels like a little bit disappointing. There's no difference. It's a point and a goal away at a football game. 2 years ago today, we had a high that very few people talk about in the same way as Ipswich, or as in the same way as when we beat Macclesfield, or winning the Checkatrade Trophy, or be away at Wembley, away at Burnley, whatever your individual kind of high is. But 2 years ago today, we had a high of a different sort, and one which kind of we've moved on from a little bit, and one that we've kind of forgotten. And I think because it kind of bookended an appalling time in all of our lives. But it was that first game back at Sincil Bank that 3,000 odd supporters were able to attend. Many, many more were not able to attend. I was lucky enough to get a ticket. My dad got a ticket as well. We were in the Stacey West. It was the playoff semi-final against Sunderland. Now, I had been blessed because I'd seen 2 games in the flesh before that. I had to watch them in an executive box. We drew 0-0 with Wimbledon and lost 7-2 to Liverpool. I was lucky. But for the rest of that season, and it was a wonderful season, however the kind of the playing field was level, however the whole budget thing changed the face of football for a season, and it did, and it's a season that will never I don't think be equaled in terms of level pay and big clubs and little clubs being on such kind of level footing. But it was a great season for Lincoln City on the field. And I discount it now. When I'm talking about Mark Kennedy and I'm talking about what he's achieved this season, I talk about the highest league finish outside of COVID times since this. I talk about the highest goal scorer since this. I talk about the most impressive first season in the 3rd tier, I think, since the 1925. But technically, the COVID season outdid all of those, but it was different. There was no supporters. There was a wage cap. There was we were in a really unique position, whereas a lot of other clubs were kind of saddled by the debt that they'd taken on and the players that they'd taken on. So it was a unique season. But take all of that away, take away all of the circumstance. It was a hell of a season on the field. And we had some wonderful games at Sincil Bank. We beat Burton, obviously. That was a really, that was a quality game. We hammered MK Dons 4-0. We won away at places like Northampton and Shrewsbury in the Cup. I seem to remember we got within a penalty of Wembley again. It was a fantastic, fantastic season. But it was hard to feel as connected to it as, for instance, this season just gone, because we weren't there. It was a television show. If you go to a battle reenactment and a World War II battle reenactment, you feel part of the action. If you sit down and watch Saving Private Ryan on television, you don't. You're just watching, you're just observing. We were observing. We were trying. The club tried as hard as they could to get us engaged, with Matchday Live, and the content was very, very good around that time. It was a great, great season. And then the playoff semi-final 2 years ago today. And I mean, it seems like a lifetime ago, by the way. 2 years ago today, Sincil Bank, Sunderland. Disappointing end to the season for the Imps, almost certainly. Sunderland in form, big players, Aidan McGeady, Charlie White. Really good club. I expected nothing because it wasn't about the football 2 years ago. And I've shared the article that I wrote that day on Twitter about what it meant, going back into the ground, seeing people we hadn't seen for 15 months because we've been locked down. You could only see 5 people at once. You could only have people in your inner circle, or whatever it was called, in your safety bubble. We hadn't been to Sincil Bank, our home, and that's what it absolutely felt like, wasn't it? And then we go back after 15 months, and okay, it was fewer fans in the ground, but it was just spine tingling. It was just one of those moments. It wasn't as the kids say these days, limbs moment, or it was later on, but it wasn't that first moment. That, if I could have bottled that feeling when I first walked into the ground, first heard the chant, first saw the supporters, if I could bottle that, if I could sum that up in a video when I got down the other day, I might have actually put that on rather than Nathan Arnold's goal. If there'd been 10,000 supporters in the stadium and not 3,000, I might even be tempted to put Tom Hopper's goal, the first goal that we'd seen at the Bank since, funnily enough, I think Tom Hopper scored against Burton. Actually, he didn't, did he? Was Scully got the last goal, didn't he? I think it was Morrell and Scully tapped it in against Burton beforehand. But it was utterly phenomenal. And here we are, 2 years to the day later, and it seems like a distant dream. Just think about it. Do you remember the time you could only watch Lincoln City on television? Do you remember the time when we weren't allowed in the grounds? We weren't allowed to meet up at the pubs. It's almost like we've gone straight back to taking it for granted. We have gone back to taking it for granted because it's normality, and the access that we have to everything kind of almost forces you to take it for granted. And I tie that back round to Sheffield Wednesday. Sheffield Wednesday lost 4-0 to Peterborough in the playoff semi-final first leg, as you know. And there was fans ripping up tickets, demanding Darren Moore be sacked. Fast forward 5-6 days, Darren Moore's the Messiah, Sheffield Wednesday, the greatest thing ever. It's such a disposable kind of culture these days. And I just think reading that article back from 2 years ago just kind of puts things a little bit back into perspective, I think. And don't get me wrong, I haven't had many knee-jerk reactions this season. I've had one or two, certainly after the Cambridge game. But I haven't had that many knee-jerk reactions. But it's just surprising to kind of read back the emotion and the feeling and the things that were going on in our minds as supporters 2 years ago today. Bear in mind, we weren't quite at the game. It was an evening kickoff. The apprehension, the excitement. It was like going to your first game all over again, but knowing what to expect, not knowing what to expect. And yeah, it was tough. You had to sit at the table and order your drinks, and there was screens between the tables in one of the pubs. And yeah, it was a sanitized experience, but those emotions were still there. And it just, watching last night as well, watching the Sheffield Wednesday fans celebrating last night and, on the pitch, I do wonder how we could possibly have celebrated the 2-0 win. And bear in mind the second leg, our second leg that season, 2-0 down, playing appallingly, half-time. I think TJ cleared one off the line. We were looking like we were dead and buried, and then up pops Tom, gets the goal. It's the last time I think I actually cried. And it was one of the first times I'd cried in football since we were relegated. And it's just, they were phenomenal moments. Why so much emotion then? Why so much emotion? Because it'd been bottled up, because we hadn't been to the game, and then we went, we won. Everything seemed like it was getting back to normal, and then it was just an amazing. And people talk about playoff semi-final comebacks, by the way, and they'll talk about last night's playoff semi-final comeback forever. They will, forever. Our playoff semi-final comeback in that second half should never be discounted, because it was absolutely phenomenal. I think I just wanted to I'm keeping it short this morning, mainly because I've lost my dog in a lot of long, wet grass. The other thing that sprung to mind, and I've already touched upon it a little bit, is that kind of the attitude towards Darren Moore when Peterborough won 4-0. Because it was the same sort of attitude I remember seeing towards Mark Kennedy after, for instance, the Chippenham game. Remember the Chippenham game? He's got to go. I remember seeing that particular post. I won't call out the person who does it. There's one person who 2 or 3 times this season used those exact words. He's got to go. After one result. Darren Moore got 96 points in this season at Sheffield Wednesday, which I think in every other Football League season throughout history would have got his team promoted. They lose the playoff semi-final first leg, and he's got to go. Pause and consider that for a moment. Mark Kennedy was 4 months into the job, keeping us lodged in mid-table in League One, the highest division that I would say an entire generation of Lincoln City fans have ever seen us play in. I don't think there's anybody watching this who can remember us playing in the old second division in 1961. Possibly people who were 9 or 10. But he's keeping us in the division at the highest level, mid-table in that division. He's got to go because we lose to Chippenham. It was a low point. It was a bad result. But it's the ease of which football is so disposable now. It's like society, isn't it? Everything's throwaway. Everything's here today, gone tomorrow. Nothing's built to last. Nothing's built for legacy. Nothing's built over time. or rather everything is built over time. Nothing's given time. Look how many managers have changed. Sheffield Wednesday, had that been Watford losing 4-0 to Peterborough, they'd probably have got rid of Darren Moore. Stuck somebody in to cover because they would have accepted defeat. The fans ripping their tickets up. That just, the fan that ripped his ticket up, I'd say it breaks my heart, but it makes me angry. How easy you can turn your back on your football club. A lot of people watching this will remember going in 2011 when we were shit and we were losing games, hand over fist, day in, day out. Cheltenham at home, we lost 2-0. I mean, I said the wrong team, but they still beat us in 2011 at home. Gillingham 4-0, Shrewsbury 5-1, Bury 5-0, Rotherham 6-0. I said every one of them games. Most of the people watching here, there's 40 odd watching on this now. Most of you will have been there. Did we rip up our tickets? Did we stop going? No, we didn't. And why? For exactly the same reason that I'm doing a video about a game that happened 2 years ago, that moment, those moments like last night for Sheffield Wednesday, because they will come. They'll always come around. They'll go away again. And when they're gone, what would have felt like achievement beforehand will feel like disappointment afterwards. Finishing 11th this season was a great season. Little cup run, little cheeky cup run tucked in there. Seen some great goals. That it doesn't feel like we will sit down in 10 years' time and go, do you remember that season we finished 11th? Do you remember that season we won 1-0 at Ipswich and 2-0 at Plymouth, and they were the two teams that were automatically promoted? We should do. There should be as much excitement, but because fresh in our mind, we've got National League wins and Wembley appearances and League Two wins and wins against Burnley and wins against Ipswich. They're what dominate us right now. They're what dominate a lot of fans' thoughts. And I think it's hard to move on from them. And the more distance that we put between the absolutely amazing Cowley era and indeed going back after COVID, that one game back, those 2 games, they were the last times, weren't they? Because they were the times that after that, Michael Appleton could never live up to what he had done before. Walking out of Wembley, having lost to Blackpool, people were so despondent and they were predicting that it was all going to go wrong after that. I was absolutely steadfast in my argument that it was not, and it did. It did go wrong. It did go downhill. Things did get tougher, and not all because of Michael Appleton or how he perceived he wanted to play football. It was because of coming out of COVID. It was because the big boys could spend again. It's because the little boys that have a lot of money could spend again and overinflate prices, and everything got much tougher. And that was that. And that was that. I don't really know what the point of this video is. Do you know what I mean? I just felt I had something to say. I felt energized this morning, having read that Sunderland article from 2 years ago, just about where we are. I just felt much more positive. We can go to the games. We're watching a half decent Lincoln City, and people will come on and go, I don't know what the game plan is. I don't know what this is. I don't know what that is. It's evolving. It's changing. We're a comfortable League One side. When the betting odds come out, and whatever your view on betting are, but the odds are always something people look at and go, where do the bookies think we're going to be? We ain't going to be in the bottom 4 for relegation. I'll guarantee you that now. Not like last season. It's progress. And the further we move away from the Sunderland game, the further we move away from COVID, the further we move away from all of the achievements of Danny and Nicky Cowley, the further we move away from that, the easier it's going to be to appreciate what we've got, where we are. It's probably why addicts relapse. Because the further they move away from their addiction, the further they move away from those constant highs, the better the next high might actually feel. I mean, that's not a motivational message, by the way. But I wonder now, and I wouldn't do it, but having been on Tramadol for so long and then coming off it, I wonder what that first one would feel like now. A hell of a lot more potent, that's for sure, than the last 7, 8 or 9 I took over the week. Funnily enough, I gave them up in COVID, actually, went cold turkey. So the longer between 2 years ago and the next time we're a success, the next time we're the darlings of the media, the next time League Two fans, or League One fans rather, are doing videos about us rather than me doing them about them, it'll be so much sweeter. Those times will come around. We'll be on the pitch one day, staying up like Cambridge, potentially going up, hopefully, for Sheffield Wednesday fans like them last night. Maybe there'll be another big cup win. It will come around. We're not a Southend, we're not a Scunthorpe, We're not a berry. We're not sinking like a stone. We're slowly building. We're doing it responsibly. We're doing it ethically. We're doing it sustainably. Up the ends.